Welcome. This is Nichel Anderson. Thank you for joining me for my podcast, Surviving Your Journey Towards Success. This particular episode, 5, will be a part 1. Okay, part 1 dealing with the show topic, interpersonal skills. Okay, how can we identify that? How can we succeed in the corporate world and so forth, even in our personal lives? Next week will be episode 6, and that will continue on with part 2 of this particular topic that I feel is very important if you wish to not only survive on your life journey, but succeed when you're working with others. Okay, thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Episode 5 for published on December the 4th for season 1, 2017 to 2018, entitled How to Increase Your Interpersonal Skills for Lasting Connections, okay, as well as for your mental peace and joy. Just to give you a recap on the previous episodes, I do recommend to listen to those as well. With the very first season episode, that was a pre-launch that was uploaded on October the 28th, dealt with corporate politics, self-improvement, mental strategies, and pretty much an outline of how I will organize my podcast for this particular one that I'm doing, Surviving Your Journey Towards Success. And then it was episode 2 that was uploaded on November the 14th. And that show topic dealt with get it done, right? If it's meant to be, then it's yours no matter what. And it kind of touched on what I mentioned in episode 1, which dealt with defining your worth and knowing that you could do it. And then episode 3 that was uploaded and published on November the 20th, it was entitled, I Believe You Got It in You. So another motivational type podcast that I wanted to break down how the patterns of how we feel about ourselves or identify our worth can prevent us from even thinking about that we can get something done in our lives that brings us joy and bring other people joy as well. So I do highly recommend episode 3, and of course, please, if you have not taken the opportunity to listen to episode 1 and 2. Then episode 4 that was uploaded on November the 27th dealt with prestige leadership, which I already know I will be doing another podcast to talk about leadership. Leadership is the cream of everything. It's the premium type objective that I feel everybody needs to have, even if being a leader is not really your cup of tea, you're not really interested, but actually being a leader in your personal life matters, because you have to be able to identify what I call prestige leadership to make sure that you are making effective choices in your life, that you feel motivated, that you feel encouraged for you to make those choices. And being a leader, that's the cream of the cream, meaning that you have to be able to make good decisions. So I'm not talking about in the business sense, in the corporate environment. I'm talking about in your personal life. You have to be a leader in your life to be able to connect with the people you need to connect, and to do the things that you need to do that brings you joy, and knowing how to make the right decision to either stay or to move on, depending on the circumstances, right? And then, of course, connecting with something that in the end of the day, it's a positive outcome, and you're part of the whole, as I like to continue to say, the circle of life. So, prestige leadership can mean both a personal type, you're managing your life right, you're producing things in the sense that you are cooperative in that expression of creativity. And I'm talking about either your personal life or your professional life. But just to let you know that I do encourage you to listen to that episode 4 as I talk about that. And then, of course, we're right back to this episode, episode 5, season 1 for my podcast 2017 to 2018. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, surviving your journey towards success. Today's topic will be about how to create strong interpersonal skills for productive work teams. And I love this particular discussion because interpersonal skills, I wrote that in my book when I felt influenced to put my experiences on paper, because it wasn't too long ago from that point I had graduated from college, and I was thinking I need to put this down because yes, you take college classes, but no one is teaching about how to survive in the corporate environment. It was nothing like high school, nothing like the classes on campus. This is like a whole different ball game. And if I could tell somebody, look, you got to learn this, you got to learn that, and it all went around the whole realm of the topic of interpersonal skills, which is so important. And so I want to talk about that today so you can learn to identify the types of interaction that it could be within the team or not. It could be directly with a supervisor, what have you, if we're talking about the business world, right? But also the personal relationship. So in this show, we will learn to identify what destroys teams and what feeds the toxicity in the workplace, as well as our personal relationships, right? So I will also outline some strategies to do about solving the issues that prevents your life's journey true experience, and that is to experience joy. Now, I know every day that that's not going to happen because that's life. That's the flavor. You get the good and the bad. But we're trying to stay away from the bad because everything is in balance, and that's going from, wisdom, ancient wisdom there. You got to keep things in balance. So in the business world, the balance of interpersonal skills determines your level of stress that can increase immediately due to the external changes of interaction with others, which basically mean, folks, interpersonal skills. It's so important. I put that in my book. That was the heart of my book because it just seems, and that was at a younger age, and I still stand by it. I was right on the money. That is the core. That is the reason, if it's bad, why you're going through all that drama at work. That is the reason why it is just totally just off the charts crazy in a relationship because of bad interpersonal skills. We need to identify that. We need to determine, will this change? And what I'm going to do about it if it don't. All right. And we must learn to maneuver a good productive way, a good productive way that would sustain your mental peace. Okay, so let's get started. All right, in this day, I am thankful to the prime creator of all things that I give thanks for this blessing and opportunity that I will use it for the greater good. Welcome, my survivors of the journey, to this podcast that aims to inspire and motivate that you continue to have the joy and peace of mind and to sustain your success. Let's get started. The show topic today, how to create strong interpersonal skills for productive work teams. Now, how are we going to do that? Let's just go back and touch on a point that I mentioned. It is the cream of the cream. It is the milk and honey in work teams. even in personal relationships. Yet there are a high number of fractured abuse, neglect, disrespect, betrayal. If you got some names, say it if you're listening to this podcast. Insensitivity, which is very huge, both in the corporate world and in personal relationship. Bullies, arrogance, high level stress that causes serious physical harm long term. And I'm going to stop because I got a couple more words I wanted to describe there to talk about when you're in an environment and there's bad interpersonal skills. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and every day I saw an ambulance outside wheeling the employee into the ambulance to calm down the reaction of high stress. I remember was talking to somebody looking at this really like, why I keep seeing ambulance? You know, what's going on? And someone like, oh, it was so and so, so and so. She had a panic attack. Oh, it was so and it was that person over there. Da da da. He freaked out and da da da. And I'm like, what? So they had to call 911. And I was thinking, okay, I know that because when you're in a stressful type of environment, if you don't see it, you don't realize that your stress levels, have escalated until it becomes a physical harm. So that's why I meant about high level stress that causes serious physical harm long term. You will be surprised how quickly your meter of stress can increase when you're in toxicity, even if it's just a little bit. So you have to be conscious of that. And that I never forget that moment because I was like, oh my God. I didn't end up staying there that long, but when I was there and that happened and someone was telling me about it, that was the same place where I worked corporate America because I saw some things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to tell people that's going to college because when you get out, it's nothing. They need to do a class about this in school. There's nothing about how to survive. When that was exposed to me and I was seeing it and seeing some people that I recognize, like every day or every other day, they would call an ambulance. So they was having like panic attacks. So at any rate, it's completely mental unrest. All of this deals with toxicity in the relationships that we have either at work or is a personal relationship, that we need to learn to identify key interpersonal skills in the other person that don't have it, and you need to apply some strategies to that, or in yourself. So if the other person do not have good and strong interpersonal skills, you got to leave. Okay. Now, somehow, some way, you got to get out. It is not easy. Whoever said it was, no, it's not easy. Okay. To identify the type of interaction that, especially if it's at the workplace, you got to be very careful with that. The corporate world is like politics. Anybody know about politics? It's nothing easy about that. You got to watch what you say. You got to know when you say it. You got to figure out who really on your team, who's not really on your team. So you have to identify those circumstances so you can make the best decision and you can get to your mental peace. So let's take a look at my point one about how things can fuel this toxicity in the workplace and personal relationship. So point one, in the business world, the balance of interpersonal skills determines your level of stress that can increase immediately due to the external changes of interaction with others. And to add on to that point, so we must learn to maneuver a tricky path towards sustainability in our mental peace objective, right? That's our adapter, is to have mental peace, because without mental peace is what? Insanity. You don't want that. I don't want that. It's a better life. So we have to learn to be respectful. But how can you be respectful surrounded by disrespectful people? And that could be co-workers or in a relationship. That's disrespectful. This is the key. You have to master the ability to choose who to engage in more than a minute. Okay, 1 minute is enough time to identify, and this would be a new thing I would say, if it's worth it. If it's worth it for a minute. In the workplace, it is very political. I mean, very. no matter what's the setup, either a small company like a mom and pop or a large Fortune 500 company. The small companies are more of a clique, because it's family, they're familiar with one another. It's just a small group, so they've been around for a long time. So it's harder to break those patterns of abuse. You basically have to decide if you are in it to stick with it, or you just there for a particular time. It's a season, and once that season is up, you're moving on. You'll learn from that, but you move on. Now, the larger companies are more delicate to maneuver in addressing the issue due to control, authority abuse, competitive nature of ambition that fuse most organizations. Similar to like swimming in a shark tank, most of the time want to just basically one over the next person, trying to get the next promotion, eat the other big fish to be the big fish in the tank. So the bottom line, you have to master to choose how to talk to that other person. Number one, you stay calm. Number two, you always focus about the facts. Number three, each time you have to make a decision, instead of thinking it's just it's just a simple decision, I'll just go ahead and, I accept this or I accept that. No, you got to think it through of the consequence of your choices. Sometimes you don't know what might happen. But what I learned in corporate America and what I'm showing you today is that once you know the players, can pretty much, if you've really been there for a while, you can determine their behavior patterns or what they normally would do and react. But if you don't, and you're not really good in identifying that, because I pretty much can take less than a minute and I can tell you exactly what you're dealing with when I consult with people, is that you have to be able to master, you have to master to choose how to communicate in a way that you're timing yourself for a minute. Anything longer than that, and that person is still going at it to a discussion to nowhere, you have to know how to enter the conversation and exit the conversation. So either when the person is talking, you can nod your head, you can repeat back. So let me clarify. You're saying this and this. And then you can come back with, this is how I feel that we should da da da. If it's something about some type of disagreement about how something should be done, you could actually do this in a personal relationship. And of course, that good phrase is basically to this point, depending on the authority. If it's at work, you can easily just conclude to say, is that your final decision? I accept that. Now, of course, normally you probably would not accept it. You might think it's a bad idea. It doesn't matter. The thing is it worth 4 minutes? That's basically what you're looking at. That's basically what you're trying to determine. If it's worth longer than a minute, I should go ahead and clarify that. If it's not, then you need to end that conversation and keep it moving. If it's worth, in the sense that, okay, I think we're getting some leeway, the person is bending, can go forward. So you just don't want, especially at work, you don't want to get into a tic-tac back and forth. All right, let's take a quick music break. We will be right back. let's return back to the podcast of surviving your journey. You make that be the main discussion, not a continuation of a discussion. Whenever it's a continuation of discussion and that person is, who we kidding, does not have good interpersonal skills, it will continue to escalate, especially if the person is in some type of authority, because they're feeding off of that energy and they're not really respecting the prestige, opportunity to be in the leader position. And it takes special skills, and interpersonal skills is one of that. The second point is that you need to also identify. So the other point that I want to say is that learn to stick to the facts that has to be addressed rather than the petty things. That goes back to what I said earlier, that if you stay long in the conversation, longer than a minute, and the person is still saying the same thing, we're not going, it's a conversation to nowhere. The trick is, it's almost like you're giving that person, in a sense, the ability to disagree. I'm going to say that another way. The second point is to learn to stick to the facts that has to be addressed rather than the petty things. Most people that falls into poor interpersonal skills are those that have the inability to address matters with a very straightforward, positive conversational interaction with another person. They don't know how, because they're more focused on something else that's not about the main picture, right? If you are a team, you focus on the project, not I. Team is a collective. It's not one person. So you get into those interactions. What I like to advise people that I'm consulting about that, the work drama, is that you always focus on the main agenda. You do not get personal. Remain calm. And the person that can't interact with that because they're dealing with petty things, because basically it comes with the self-esteem of that person, is just a complete imbalance. You do not get into that. So you have to communicate in a way that after a minute and it's going nowhere, you have to also pay attention to the responses. And basically we're dealing with a conversation not going anywhere, then their responses is not really addressing the core problem. Instead of focusing on A, B, and C, they weigh on J, K, L, and down the street. They're not even focused on that. So you know what you're dealing with at that point. And at that point, of course, I kind of get into the part of just documenting the conversation. You still have a light, positive attitude about it. Sometimes you have to show the other person, especially in business, right? It's one thing I like about corporate America is if you document everything is there to see the patterns. And that's what helped me a lot. I always showed the same pattern of behavior dealing with any type of issue that came up. I always was polite. I always expressed myself in a very calm way, because the confrontation back and forth is not worth it, right? It's not worth the disturbance of my mental peace. And people, especially higher up, look at that pattern. They look at that. That's how they judge you. If you off the charts and you can't handle the stress level, in the sense that you're just erratic, that would be the portfolio that they look back. Should I trust this person? Should I believe this person? Should I believe this person is coming into my office? Which one should I support? Which one? They look at all of that. So you always want to have a track history of how you dealt with conflict, or how the other person, when they're talking to you, you're not the one that's very unstable or erratic. It's the other person. Because trust me, the person that has poor interpersonal skills, it never fails. In the end, it will explode, because you cannot work in a corporate environment, and it's all about the team effort. And you can't communicate and connect, and people will start withdrawing from you. So you have to take control of what you say, how you say it, and when you need to move on. So just avoid the drama. After a minute, you decide, should I continue this conversation or should I exit out of it? Oh, okay. You can say it like this to the person. I hear your suggestion. I understand it, that that's what you feel at this time is the best option. I just disagree, but I have accepted. And then change the discussion and move on, right? I would definitely document that's what you had, or at least, have some type of record that you can bring back up to show that you tried This concludes part 1 for episode 5, season 1 of my show, Surviving Your Journey Towards Success. I want to thank you again for joining me today, where I talked about interpersonal skills, the cream of the cream. Okay, so next week will be episode 6 that will continue on with part 2 of this discussion. Another thing I want to add regarding contacting me, if you want to have a consultation or you just have questions that you want me to answer on the show, you can either email me, which is the best method. It's info@nichelanderson.com. You can fill out a contact form on my website, just clicking contact us, and then it would take you to that form to fill out. Now, I have seen where people are looking at my international numbers, phone numbers. Those are usually when I'm doing free webinars that people can call in. But if you wish to, for people that wish to call in, but if you wish to communicate, with me by phone through one of my toll-free numbers, it's best to send me an email so we can set up that time. Now I am on Skype, and that's Nichel.Anderson on Skype, and we can talk that way. If not, if you just prefer, because I have seen people, when I look at my stats, that they're reaching or at least trying to communicate to me, I don't get any type of response coming in. I just see some traffic going to my international numbers page, which is basically when I'm doing live events. I don't have any live events scheduled anytime soon, so if you're in need for some type of consultation, you're needing some information from me, it's better to use my email address, and then we can communicate that way and perhaps set up a time where we could talk either by Skype or some other means. If you don't have access to Skype because you're not in the United States or in a country that have that accessibility, then please go ahead, send me an email, and we can set something up that you could use that international phone line based on your country. Now, how that is set up, of course, I will have to be the leader of that in executing that and setting that up so you can get access to dial in. I am not plugged in into the toll-free number system unless I'm setting up a particular time frame that I will be. So when you look there and you're trying to call there, how that is set up is where it's some type of special event, or we have communicated prior to that I will be plugged in into the phone system waiting for the participants to enter by a conference call. Okay? Again, if you have any questions, please, I don't bite. Go ahead and send me an email, and you can direct message me on my social platforms. I'm usually on Twitter in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon, but most of the time in the morning. And you can use Facebook at my fan page, and you can direct message me there if you have any questions or concerns, or you just need to talk about something. Trust me, I understand. I really want to help you, and we can get it done. I want to thank you so much for listening to my episode today. Now, I do provide career consultation, offering the first hour free. You can book it through my official website, which is Nichel, N as in Nicholas, Nichel Anderson.com, okay? And you can schedule a consultation as well. Now, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast and share as well. And my podcast is nichelanderson7.podbean.com, okay? All right. And I'm also on iTunes. You can download it straight from either iTunes or my podcast homepage on Podbean. Now, please follow me on social media. My Twitter account is, of course, Nichel Anderson. So it's Twitter facebook.com/Nichel Anderson. I'm also on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/Nichel Anderson fan page. And my official website is Nichel Anderson. And I would like to see if you can go ahead and submit your email address. And I do send out quick little motivational quotes directly to your inbox that you can get personally from me. If you have any direct questions, you can email me at info@nichelanderson.com. Now, these show notes will be provided on my Podbean website. And if you on iTunes, you'll just see you'll click there at the bottom, and you can see you can get directly to my podcast website, or you can go to my official website, nichelanderson.com. You can also purchase my Corporate America book. It is Corporate America: Surviving Your Journey Toward Success. You can purchase that on Amazon. And also my Mole, my other project, my Mole book, which is Mitzrayim. You can purchase that on Amazon as well. My regular new broadcasts here are uploaded on Mondays by 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If we have any guest speakers out there that want to be on the show and be interviewed, please fill out my guest application form. You will locate that on my Podbean site for my podcast, and that's NichelAnderson7.podbean. So I want to go ahead and end my show with my closing statement. Be you that strengthens and inspires your ability to be strong in your journey endeavor. It's a good thing towards your mental peace and joy, always to your success.